Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some news. Prince William official makes a strategic announcement about King Charles's health update after Buckingham Palace announced King Charles III's health. A very important constitutional event has gotten a lot of interest both in the UK and throughout the world. This research reconstructs the series of palace comments, contextualizes them within the medical and familial backdrop, scrutinizes the activation of a hitherto managed succession mechanism, and evaluates the immediate political, institutional, and public consequences. The monarchy has sought to harmonize the dignity and personality of a reigning sovereign with the need for ongoing governance via a carefully coordinated, unprecedented transition referred to as a soft succession in royal terminology. The case highlights critical concerns about constitutional practice, the lack of transparency in public institutions, and the ways in which contemporary dynastic monarchs adapt rituals and laws to address health and cognition. Initial statement and background. On a rainy morning in Sandringham, the royal household sent out a short message in the calm tone of Buckingham Palace. His Majesty's condition is now under intensive observation. The 9-word sentence didn't say he was dead or provide any medical details, but it did hint that things were very bad. Constitutional experts thought that the word meant that doctors were continuing to treat patients and that legal and customary procedures for continuity may be applied. The fact that the announcement came from Sandringham and that the media was there made it more important. During occasional rain showers, reporters and camera crews waited outside the estate's gate for news. Flashes lit up the black iron gates with the royal insignia on them, creating creepy images of gloomy gatherings and reinforced entrances that showed an institution facing deep doubt. Even if it didn't want to, the remark changed public life and started a story that the monarchy may be entering a crucial stage, which set off mechanisms of constitutional continuity. This carefully worded letter shows that the palace has always used language sparingly, even when the institution is weak. Minimalism helps keep people dignified and eliminate sensationalism, but it also opens the door to speculation from the media and politicians. As a result, the short message told those who were acquainted with contingency preparations and made the public think about the idea of monarchical continuity again. Getting ready and keeping things secret. Several individuals within the royal household said that both practical and symbolic preparations were made before the news was made public. The staff saw that the king's private study, where he reviewed official papers and handled daily correspondence, had been cleaned up. His personal things were taken, his diary was open on the desk, and aides wrote down recent entries, including, "The burden continues." Constitutional historians and knowledgeable correspondents saw these actions as a carefully planned process that put institutional stability ahead of speculative revelation. The king's secret handwritten order, which he signed before his health became worse, was very important to what happened. Senior advisors knew that the king personally approved a final directive in case he couldn't carry out his constitutional duties as king. Only a small, trusted group of people, such as Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Prince William, the Prince of Wales, could see the contents. An insider remarked, "It changes everything." The letter, which was supposed to be kept in a Sandringham vault, sparked widespread speculation over whether it meant the end of a reign or was a planned move by the king to balance his own dignity with the need to keep the government running. During this time, the palace had a hard time maintaining the king's medical secrecy while still taking practical steps that required more people to be involved and made it more likely that he would be exposed. The sealed instructions and cautious removal of personal objects from the research were examples of managed opacity, important acts with little information sharing. The institutional evaluation of trust and confidentiality relies on precedent discernment and agreement among elites on the material contained inside the sovereign's private realm. This freedom goes against the rules that say people should be able to see everything and the public's interest in constitutional issues. Changes in the king's health and how doctors respond. Taking into account medical advances and the king's public schedule, the palace statement should be read. Over the course of several months, Charles gradually cut down on his public appearances. The monarch usually wrote letters in the morning, went on rural walks, and checked the red dispatch box at night. In the last several months, he has made fewer public appearances and spent more time on private activities. Official explanations called this recalibration a wise move for an elderly sovereign, but clinical findings were more worrisome. Medical advisors were more and more worried about the king's health. He supposedly took part in a specialized immunotherapy study to help with a rare neoplasm. Making the operations seem like normal health care in public protected the privacy of the doctors and made people less scared. Early morning helicopter rides and short public appearances, which were advertised as restful rural vacations, were really rigorous supervised treatments meant to lower attention at a national cancer center. People who knew about the arrangements stressed that the king's movement was limited by medical need and the deliberate lack of clarity in the treatment plan. Queen Camilla took care of things at home and decided who may see the royal family. She was calm and helpful on the outside, but a former courtier claimed she was like a hawk when it came to controlling access. According to reports, her actions were meant to provide the calm needed for treatment and recovery while limiting political or media influence at a sensitive time. The medical trajectory shows a lot of worrying tendencies. Acute sickness and prolonged treatment may impact ability assessments, especially when clarity varies with confusion. The requirement to protect the health information of the royal family must be balanced with the need for public institutions to find out whether the sovereign can do his or her basic duties. The participation of close relatives and senior clerics in medical and constitutional affairs highlights the dual private-public nature of the monarchical office, both personal and institutional. Changes in duties and plans for succession. When Charles's duties decreased, Prince William took on more public duties. He went on formal excursions that the king would have gone on, went to more public events, and had private talks with the Prime Minister. People thought that his active role in the Commonwealth Leadership Forum, which is traditionally connected to the monarch, was a way to redistribute tasks. The palace called these plans shared responsibility, but many thought they were just getting ready for the Prince of Wales to become king. Princess Anne was very important for running the country. Her caution and knowledge of procedures made her an important link between protocol and urgency. The king asked her to go through the Windsor archives for a letter that the Queen wrote soon before she died in 2022. Sources say that the late king wrote, "If duty ever outweighs health, let clarity protect the crown." The letter was given to Charles in early September and is said to have changed the king's mind. He became more introspective and cut back on his schedule, spending more time in the north wing of Sandringham, where his mother had done official duties. These changes show that there have been changes in ceremonial, symbolic, and operational roles. By giving William and Anne public duties, the family was planning for the future and setting new expectations for people in the U.S. and across the world. The gradual transition gave government partners, multinational enterprises, and the public time to get used to things, which lowered the chances of constitutional misinterpretations or crises caused by abrupt duty vacancies. Private order. In this situation, talks started on how to write and set up a sealed directive. The king wrote out his wishes for medical incapacitation in a handwritten memo. The letter was kept in a cedar box in a crypt beneath Sandringham Chapel, where only Princess Anne, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Prince William could get to it. It was established that 3 people went to the Sandringham instruction inauguration. The command did not give up its power or act as a will. It was an unusual constitutional system that allowed a reigning monarch to freely give up administrative power to make sure that things stayed the same during his life. Current reports say that the agreement required the Prince of Wales to temporarily take over administrative duties and the Princess Royal to have full advisory powers. This was to make sure that the Crown's duties would continue in case the monarch died or there was an unexpected constitutional void. Its existence and activity present considerable legal and normative obstacles. UK statutes, which have changed over time and are not always written down, set forth rules for regency and succession. However, they do not allow a sovereign to give up their responsibilities voluntarily while keeping their title and ceremonial position. As a result, the secret command relied on the sovereign's authority-family agreement and the silent support of important institutions in a legal and constitutional vacuum. Constitutionalists have long debated the possibility of legislation legitimizing anticipatory agreements while preserving democratic accountability and institutional transparency. Poor health that may be seen by the public people were more worried about the king's health than ever. The king tripped and seemed lost during a charity event in early September. Some commentators said the problem was due to fatigue, while others said it was due to therapy and sleep problems. Official media reports all said the same thing: the king is resting. However, an unmarked medical transport van and the royal physician's automobile were observed driving through Sandringham at night, which raised eyebrows. Princess Anne confronted the king, who was alone with Queen Elizabeth's letter, and said clearly, "You cannot overshadow the truth." After a long silence, he replied, "It is not the truth that I fear. It is what it bequeaths." This conversation showed that the king understood and cared about the crown and family ties, not that he personally disagreed with them. Public disclosures and anecdotal evidence demonstrate the ambiguous threshold between family connections and constitutional ramifications. In an atmosphere that was focused on the news and social media, it was hard to manage information wisely. The king's private ideas, which were shared via intermediaries, show the moral problems that a monarch has while trying to balance their own morals with their duties as a ruler. Constitutional threshold and possible start. By the second week of October, the king's rejection of 4 public appearances made it clear what was wrong with him. Even though it wasn't clear, the media started calling Prince William the acting sovereign when he went to Sandringham several times. Catherine, Princess of Wales, took part in more public rituals that were meant to reassure people and show that she was ready for her formal duties. People who saw her saw that she was nervous, which led them to recommend that she should get ready for her next obligations more quickly. A secure message was sent to Prince William's home in the early hours of the morning. It said, "His Majesty has lost full cognitive clarity." This did not mean death, but it did mean that the monarch was reaching a constitutional limit. If he was very confused, tired, and on strong medication, he might not be able to do his duties anymore. Recent reports of confusion, such as a query asked of Princess Anne about the late Queen's coronation, showed how important it was to have backup procedures in place. After the warning, experts looked over medical records and constitutional lawyers were called in to make sure that the acts that followed were in line with the law and established practices. The secret directive was made public in front of the 3 chosen confidants. Many news sites said that it meant the Prince of Wales should take over temporarily if he became mentally impaired, and the Princess Royal should have full advising powers. The document was a voluntary anticipatory way for the sovereign to give up executive duties without losing the title or going through death or permanent abdication processes. The threshold invocation and instructive opening demonstrate how constitutional pragmatism may rectify legislative inadequacies via private sovereign initiatives and public institutional support. This pragmatic structure depends on the loyalty of those who may contact the sovereign and the ability of legislative and administrative bodies to recognize and accept an irregular but perhaps valid transfer of powers. The story shows a big conflict between legal formality and pragmatism, immediate effects on work and family. After the order was given, steps were taken to improve communications and control the public narrative. Sandringham limited communication to control the flow of information. A royal helicopter was sent to Windsor, and extra logistics were put in place to keep official communications going. Queen Camilla was not present for the first phase of implementation. Later, an aide confirmed that she had left quietly on a private flight to Florence during the night. Her press office released a short statement saying that she needed time to gather herself. Sources said that she left after long disagreements about the activation of the sealed instruction. She believed that the king would regain full capacity. Her short absence from making decisions raised worries about family disagreements and reaching a consensus. The operational response, stopping communication, moving assets around, and combining responsibilities shows how well a bureaucracy can handle a crisis. Camilla's resignation brought attention to the personal and sometimes terrible effects of making decisions under pressure in institutions. Her resignation and subsequent remarks incited public and media examination of the balance between personal loyalty and constitutional duties, and the emergence of family duty conceptions as significant public issues. Framing in the media and archival intervention. Different news sources covered the event in different ways. The Telegraph's piece was headlined, "The Crown Pauses, Prince William Assumes Interim Powers," which drew attention to the change in power. Some publications called it a quiet transition protocol, while experts called it soft succession, which means that a living monarch gives up their obligations on their own to keep the institution going. A second letter from Queen Elizabeth II, kept in the royal archives at Windsor, gave moral support for the decisions made at a key time. Written in her last year and meant to be read only if her son became ill, it said, "If continuity should falter, let grace prevail." This excerpt, along with copies of the late Queen's handwriting in several national newspapers, gave the decision a moral weight and made the family's actions fit with an ethic of intergenerational stewardship. Intervention in archives has effects on both discourse and institutions. Archival documents, particularly royal communications, convert private feelings into public approbation. The palace and its affiliates confirmed historical authority. Scholars see this archival use as a legitimizing story that uses memory and tradition to support a new way of doing things. Enacted memory is a common tool in constitutional politics, but using it here means trying to tie what people do now to a service identity that has been passed down through generations. Responses from across the world and from the United States. Respect and support were common across the world. The White House praised the King's courage and the Prince of Wales's dedication. The Pope sent his congratulations, and Commonwealth countries like Canada and Australia looked at their own constitutions again to see how the Crown's position was changing without causing any problems. Democratic leaders stressed the need to protect private medical information while also recognizing the public's desire for a stable administration. Parliament held an unusual Sunday meeting to talk about constitutional issues related to a royal medical suspension. This gathering was mostly for show, but it showed that the institution supported Prince William's supposed power. Traditionalist groups spoke out against it. People who worked for Queen Elizabeth II remembered how they thought things would change when she died and were worried about how this would affect them. The Times quoted an unnamed former official who said, "We prepared for a sovereign's death, not their decline." This was in reference to the extraordinary suspension of a reigning royal. International esteem and internal parliamentary alignment show how important the monarchy is diplomatically and constitutionally. However, the answers showed that there was a link between symbolic authority and institutional tolerance. Commonwealth countries, which link the crown to multiple sovereigns in different legal systems, had to think about the legal and ceremonial repercussions of a temporary operational transfer to the Prince of Wales, even if the immediate effects were not very big. Because of this legal intricacy, the monarchy and its foreign partners should talk more clearly about what to do in case of an emergency. Quick polling showed that the people supported the selected direction. At Sandringham, aides saw that the king's mental lucidity was fading as he kept asking about how the populace felt. More than 70% of those who took YouGov's quick survey said that Prince William's temporary leadership was the right and respectful decision. In a moment of insight, he asked his doctor, "Are they unhappy?" The doctor told him, "No, Your Majesty." People close to them said, "They are proud." The meaning and movement of regalia. The story used a lot of symbolic gestures. The announcement that the imperial state crown had been moved from the Tower of London to Windsor for cleaning and preservation had a big effect. A lot of critics said that the crown's presence in Windsor instead of on the sovereign's head meant that the monarch was temporarily suspended, and that the move was a visual symbol of a constitutional break for a live but limited ruler. Moving and placing regalia was a way of sending a message on purpose. Regalia symbolize continuity power and constitutional order. Their move, whether it was made public or not, changes the way people see institutions by changing the way functional authority works. In this case, the imperial state crown and other items that went with it were moved to calm a people who were used to seeing signs of order and legality. Creating a framework, gentle succession. The palace called the procedure a soft succession. Prince William became the de facto controller of the monarchy, putting stability ahead of assertion. An assistant said he was not a man seizing power, but one bearing responsibility, which showed how serious he was. Princess Anne was William's main counselor. Their dual regency wasn't officially recognized, but it was a good example of how they worked together to run the country. Anne used her knowledge of procedures to run the Privy Council, the administration, and the Church of England, while William's job as the public face of the changeover was to give people peace of mind and stability. Catherine helped people with family troubles by working with hospitals, charities, and military families. The term soft succession refers to normative ideas about stewardship, dignity, and time. It requires transience, voluntariness, and institutional superiority over individual gain. A gentle succession raises questions about norms. Does it support democratic accountability and openness? How should the duties of temporary authority be made clear? Moral legitimacy derived from filial obligation and historical validation and procedural clarity are equally essential to the effectiveness of the arrangement. Strains and family breakdown. Even though the institution was stable, there was conflict inside it. People thought Queen Camilla's trip to Italy was more of a family vacation than just a way to get there. Reports said that she didn't want to reveal the sealed instruction, and then she left after the decision. The fact that her communications staff wasn't talking to her, and that she sent a personal video message from a French chateau seemed to weaken the authority of the story. In her video, she said, "My husband remains the king," and stressed that he had not abdicated, which went against what most people were saying. The hashtags, Queen Camilla Speaks and Not My Regency, became popular for a short time, which made people even more unhappy. Court staff said that Camilla thought about becoming the interim regent, while the king was becoming worse. But both the king and Princess Anne rejected the idea. Her brief absence, together with the departure of a long-time lady-in-waiting who said she was leaving because of ethical discomfort, fueled rumors about personal problems. However, Queen Elizabeth II's later letter and the Archbishop of Canterbury's involvement provided moral and institutional backing for the selected path, considerably easing these difficulties. These arguments show how fragile private agreement is when it is put to the test in public. When family fights become public activities, they become constitutional issues. The story shows how personal fights in the royal family may affect the stability of institutions and the trust of the people. Public discourse, unity, disagreement, and social media. Different feelings in the public remained. Outside of Buckingham Palace and Sandringham fans held signs that said, "We stand with William," and "Long live the king and the future king." Others said that the palace was secretly pushing the prince to the side. Social media spread rumors and conspiracy theories, creating a parallel conversation that made it hard to understand what journalists were saying. Traditional media and social media have created two very different information ecosystems. One is based on historical releases, institutional statements, and mainstream analysis, while the other is based on quick conjecture, visual memes, and grassroots opinion. This division confused stakeholders and academics who were trying to put together stories and figure out what the public thought. Moreover, it highlighted a basic component of current constitutional events. Legitimacy arises from disputed and diversified mediated public discourse in conjunction with institutions and legislative texts. Intervention by religion and emotional adjustment. Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, came to Sandringham at a very important time to provide constitutional and pastoral advice. He read parts of Queen Elizabeth II's address, which stressed the need for unity and caution. During a short visit with Prince William, the Archbishop said, "The King has entrusted his son. Let's not argue about their love," he said, changing the conversation right away. As public surveys began to support the family's viewpoint, skeptical pundits praised the Abbey's role in mediating moral authority. There are two important reasons why senior clergy should be involved. First, the Church of England is officially part of the monarchy's symbolic and institutional structure, which gives it a lot of power at times of crisis. Second, religious language and pastoral framing may make institutional choices easier to understand by turning them into moral stories. The Archbishop gave advice and made things official, combining spiritual care with constitutional government. Responses to differences in generations and social classes. Different age groups and socio-economic strata reacted in different ways. Some aristocracy were sad that traditions were being broken and wished for a day when sovereign decline rights were more about death than incapacitation. On the other hand, younger generations saw the event as a sign that institutions can change. Many posts on social media showed the event as a turning point for the monarchy, often using old footage and thoughtful captions to show how it has changed and grown stronger. The differences show that the monarchy's legitimacy is based on groups that are against one another. Younger people care more about adapting and helping others when they become elderly and sick, whereas older elites care more about following rules and traditions. Institutions must find ways to balance the importance of ceremonies with current ethics. Encounters with individuals and symbols, personal factors made it hard for processes to work. After the contingency plan was put into action, the king seemed to have a moment of clarity and asked to talk to Prince William in private. Even though this conversation wasn't made public, the prince's trips alone revealed that they had an emotionally important meeting. The king once ordered that the imperial state crown, which was then at Windsor, be moved to Sandringham and placed in the chapel beside his mother's stained glass window. He didn't mean to wear it. Instead, the act was meant to show that the crown was still in authority, not to show that he was in charge. The calm conversation and ceremonial activities serve different moral purposes. They communicate meaning via gestures, allowing the sovereign to establish trust and symbolic power while maintaining personal dignity. They show specialists in ritual and symbolism how material culture and private transactions may take the place of constitutional rituals. Current reality and public discourse. The next morning, the monarchy reached unknown constitutional territory. A reigning sovereign had stepped down in a planned and courteous way because of physical limitations. The national media showed great respect. The Guardian called it a quiet revolution in succession, while the Times called it the regency we were never told about. The national conversation was about stewardship, adaptable leadership, and institutional accountability. This new public order was all about Prince William. He was not a king, but he did have a constitutional duty that went beyond being the heir. He began his first recorded speech as king in the Sandringham study with Catherine off camera. He spoke about commitment to family and duty to the institution. "My father is still our sovereign, our strength, and our moral compass. I do this now not instead of his will, but because of it." He thanked the public and medical staff for their support, and in a personal note talked about the universal experience of caring for aging parents. For every son who sees his father getting older too quickly, I stand with you. The speech was praised for its calm understanding and constitutional tone. All the premiers in the Commonwealth made expressions of respect. Later, major actor improvements. After the secret command was put into effect, Queen Camilla continued to remain quiet in public even after her first video message. People who work at the palace said she was deep in thought and kept to herself. Princess Anne became more well-known in public as she carried out her official duties, stayed out of family problems, and kept the government stable. Prince William stressed the need for working together to run the government and keep the people together via responsible leadership. People who saw said that the roles of institutions quickly changed to meet real-world requirements. The new system worked well if government clerical and domestic authorities recognized that the sealed order curtailed informal power. This recognition indicates a constitutional culture that may accept non-standard processes, provided they are transitory, agreed upon, and required by the sovereign. The end of King Charles's reign and the situation of affairs. During the event, the king was being watched by doctors. His mental clarity changed a lot, and he often asked the people what they thought. His idea to put the imperial state crown in Sandringham Chapel, even though he didn't want to wear it, was a touching end to his time in office. In the last several weeks, the king has maintained the crown's dignity while giving up some of his obligations to keep the institution stable. History will perceive the crown's positioning and sealed directive as a contemporary attempt to balance people's freedom with the necessity for a constitution. It reinterprets the succession of monarchs as a continuous flow of power that may be temporarily shifted to keep the state running. Final thoughts. The things that happened at Sandringham and Buckingham Palace are very important for the British monarchy in both constitutional and symbolic ways. The brief statement that His Majesty's condition is now under intensive observation, the execution of a sealed order issued by King Charles III, and the delegation of temporary authority to Prince William, along with Princess Anne's official advisory role, and the Archbishop of Canterbury's moral and constitutional oversight show a new way of dealing with a sovereign who is unable to rule. This procedure, called a soft succession, put dignity, consistency, and legality ahead of showmanship. It went against common ideas about how monarchies change, getting backing from most of the public and foreign capitals, but criticism from traditionalists and family disagreements that have led to further scrutiny. The incident shows that the monarchy may balance personal weakness with constitutional duties. It shows how important informal methods like handwritten orders, archived letters, and pastoral interventions are for dealing with the problems caused by weak state leaders in addition to official laws. Politically and legally, the issue raises questions about whether current laws and procedures are good enough to deal with the problems of a living sovereign who is functionally incapacitated, as well as whether formal processes should be put in place to reduce uncertainty in the future. Many useful ideas come to light. First, more clear procedural frameworks that balance medical privacy with institutional knowledge of the sovereign's skills may include defined medical assessment processes, restricted access advisors, and parliamentary notification methods with limited privacy. Second, symbolic and archival resources provide legitimacy, which means that being open about things that have happened in the past might make people trust the government more. Thirdly, the story shows how important trust is across generations and within families. For a smooth transition, essential parties must agree and be able to turn private intentions into public deeds. The story raises important questions about the crown, its successors, and the public realm. These questions include those about privacy versus openness, family ties within government, and the moral standards a country uses to judge responsibility, dignity, and continuity. The soft succession at Sandringham will be examined as a modern example of constitutional improvisation, careful handling of human weakness, that will have long-lasting effects on constitutional norms, royal rituals, and public expectations. It encourages researchers to investigate the reconciliation of law, ritual, and human agency within unwritten constitutional frameworks, and to consider whether formal changes might augment discretion to provide more transparent, democratically accountable routes through sovereign vulnerability. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts, and goodbye for now.